It's time once again to turn back the clock and take a look at Swindon from a time gone by. More Swindon Through the Years, comparing the images from the past with those of a modern Swindon. And this time we're turning back the clock to the 1990s. It was boom time for Swindon, expansion, conversion and improvements, all captured by the Swindon cable cameras for the weekly news programme This is Swindon. We now look back at some of those images, capturing a town in transition, frozen in time, in more Swindon Through the Years. Delving into the Swindon Cable Archive, we're turning back the clock to 1994. Another look at Swindon through the years. We're in the north of Swindon as we begin our look back, and this is the entrance into Abbey Meads, a major estate developed to tackle the growing need for housing in Swindon's ever-growing expansion. The northern development area was first identified by Swindon Corporation in the 1960s, planning for Swindon's further expansion. After years of intense negotiation, planning permission for 10,000 new homes was granted in 1992. Abbey Meads was built over a quarter of a century ago. The roads and streets of houses, shops, pubs and a school all now benefit from mature trees and shrubs that line the area. As you might expect, everything you need is right here. So let's turn back the clock to 1994. This then is the initial entrance. Construction work had only just begun. The flags were flying, the show homes under construction, and the contractors working like ants across the site. At the peak, the project had 12 of the UK's leading house builders building with over 2,700 houses in the development known as Abbey Meads. A range of different types of houses being constructed by different developers. These ones amongst the first, being built by Gallagher. Fresh new houses, fresh new bricks, new pavements, tons and tons of materials being used to build houses for future generations of Swindon people on a greenfield site. This was an exciting time for Swindon. Once again, expansion was taking place, this time in the north of the town. It was to become a huge and important development, with thousands of new homes attracting people into the town, filling new jobs created by a range of companies that now called Swindon their home. These views, taken in December 1994, show work on some of the first homes built on the site. The need for housing meant the pressure was on, as work continued in all weathers. It's easy to forget just how messy and disruptive construction work can be. Finding the location for the modern images proved to be a bit of a challenge. The area has aged well, and it's hard to place when looking for a location from over 25 years ago. But today, this is the main entrance to Abbey Meads. There's no reference point to link to the original images. The whole area was further transformed when road traffic increased and roundabouts were built to ease the flow. Back in 1994, the road junction had just been constructed, and traffic continued to zoom past on its way to and from Blunsdon using Lady Lane. Today, there is no reference point. The whole area has changed. But this is approximately the same view, the same angle, looking at the same junction. The sign promises a new lifestyle for the 21st century, and for those residents that now live in Abbey Meads, it did just that, and in the process turned farmland into housing. And just so you can place exactly where this is, looking in the opposite direction is the Swindon Orbital, with its large Asda superstore and a variety of shops and local amenities. It's hard to imagine now that the name Abbey Meads back then was unfamiliar, a new name for a major northern housing estate. Construction work in full flow back in 1994. This particular house provides a fascinating reference point, and it took ages to find in amongst the literally hundreds of houses on the estate. But watch what happens as we jump forward over 25 years. Fascinating to learn also, when I took these images, I spoke to the people living in the house, and they told me they bought it after it had been the original show house, and they've lived there ever since. Back then, this house was literally in a field that had become a construction site. Impossible to visualise the utter and complete transformation of the land here that was underway. The area has certainly matured well. The construction's long been forgotten. On the wall, a diamond brick pattern. And here's that same pattern in the modern view. This was another show home, but almost impossible to see today. The trees and bushes have grown to such an extent that the house is almost hidden from view. In 1994, it stood alone, fully complete as a brand new show home. Interesting to note that the fence around the plot seems to be the original. It certainly lasted well. The three houses in this view seen during construction. And today, now that private gardens have been established, the view of the same houses from a slightly different angle. Today, this has fully matured into just one area of the northern expansion, which now includes the likes of Oakhurst, St Andrew's Ridge and the newest area built at Tadpole Lane, together providing over 25,000 homes. It provides a fascinating insight across the years, images capturing time in an ever-changing Swindon through the years. Here's a site with a fascinating history. And unless you recognise it, it might surprise you. The monuments here paid tribute to the important part that this location played in Swindon's history. They commemorate a site that was once the Princess Alexandra Royal Air Force Hospital that stood here between 1941 and 1995. And what a difference across the decades. Here's how the main building looked back in 1994 when news of its closure had just been announced. The hospital provided services to the armed forces, their families and local people too, often being used when the old Princess Margaret Hospital was full. These images remind us of a time gone by, and I'd certainly forgotten what the building looked like. The RAF General Hospital, as it was known, opened on the 14th of June 1941, and its busiest period followed the Allied landings in Normandy on D-Day. The first casualties arriving on the 13th of June 1944. having landed at nearby RAF Lynham. In the 6 months following D-Day, 4,811 casualties passed through the hospital. Wroughton continued as a general hospital, treating military patients, and from 1958 took on NHS cases to relieve the backlog in the Swindon area. It all sounds very familiar. These images were taken for the Swindon Cable News programme and were used to illustrate the ongoing story around the site's closure. For many people, they have nothing but good memories, having been treated or perhaps having children born at the Princess Alexandra Hospital. As a youngster, I always remember the car slowing down so we could see the aeroplane on display. And there have been several across the years, all these images reminding us of a time gone by and the important part the hospital played caring for local people in Swindon. Today, there are no reference points for any of the buildings to compare our then and now images. Everything was swept away. The hospital officially closed on the 31st of March 1996 as part of government's defence cuts at the end of the Cold War. The hospital was demolished and the 65-acre site is now called Alexandra Park. It contains housing and a well-used conference centre. But as we remember its past history, these poignant pictures really do show us how a modern town has to adapt to modern needs. And from the main road, this is where once upon a time the aeroplane would have stood guard. The trees around it have certainly matured. The images unlocking the past and distant memories. Today the road is even called Comet Way. A signpost from 1994. It shows this is an MOD site and houses the main reception and the officers' married quarters. On that same corner of the junction, and here's our modern view. The road layout familiar, much the same as it was over 25 years ago. No longer an MOD site, the signs long gone, along with the security fencing. No longer needing to protect the area from casual visitors. Looking down the road, this is now one of the main entrances to the housing estate. Today it hides its former use well, looking like any other residential road. It's hard to imagine for modern visitors that this was once an important MOD facility. Where people now live was once a hospital, responsible for saving people's lives. The memorials on the site are a reminder of the connection to the past. Many local people still speak fondly of the long-gone RAF Princess Alexandra Military Hospital at Wroughton. We'll have more Swindon Through the Years coming soon, but in the meantime, please do remember, like, comment and share. We'd like to hear your memories of a changing town. And look out, more Swindon Through the Years coming soon.